Code Orange, The Above. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell, by the way. This is the band's 5th overall full-length album, following up their incredible 2020 album Underneath. The band were fully realised and much more sonically ambitious to boot. This new one here sees the band attempting to bring a more even balance of their cleaner sound, as well as their skull-crushing, industrially tinged metalcore, with a little bit of alt metal thrown in there for good measure. Do I think they succeed? Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's find out! Never Far Apart is really a tale of two halves. Reba dominates the first portion vocally, gliding over some very somber piano chords and distant glitches. Jamie offers some chilly spoken word that paints a grim picture for humanity. We're always doomed to our own generational habits rearing themselves again and again, because that's just who we are. Products of our environments. Human beings don't change their nature when faced with their own failure. The transition to heavier guitars and drums is pretty fluid, plus the eventual breakdown in the final leg is fairly gratifying too. Nothing crazy, but it's decent. Theatre of Cruelty doesn't really pull any punches. The usual fare of chugging guitars is here in full force, and some of the themes from the previous cut show up to reinforce themselves. The cleaner portions seem more like quick refreshments between these extended assaults. The shrieks of Live Now, Die Later are pretty cathartic too. Take Shape with Billy Corgan was a teaser to this album. On first listen, I recall not being too enamored with this track. I guess I was just underwhelmed by the direction initially. It has grown on me significantly since my first reaction though. Love this one. Love the grinding industrial guitars and beats on the verses, the Deftones-esque explosion on the chorus that I haven't been able to stop humming in some capacity. The searing riffs that envelop the mix are just the cherry on top. The Mask of Sanity Slips is yet another commendable alt-rock rager, in my opinion. The band swaps between these watery, come-as-you-are guitar tones and some of the most dissonant guitar noise on the entire album. They incorporate some nice pinch harmonics into the riffage in the latter portion of the track too. It's a cool piece of ear candy. Lyrically, the track is kind of spelling it out for the listener. The Mask of Sanity is slipping. A drone opting out of the Hive features these super crystalline bits of synth that bounce off the core riff of this track really satisfyingly. Not to mention that this is perhaps the most mosh-worthy song on the entire album. I'm a big fan. The outsider themes in the lyrics are supported by just how uninviting the music on this track is. I Fly brings back the arena-sized alt metal anthems side of this album. The very righteous chorus on this thing has a lot of power, it has a lot of oomph, and in terms of cuts in this vein, this is certainly one of the more admirable attempts. I do want to mention the ear-piercing walls of feedback and shrill guitar that fly in on the back end that are absolutely thrilling. They completely come out of nowhere and resolve the tension this track has been building. The Game and Grooming My Replacement were a nice 1-2 punch as lead singles. The former being a freewheeling piece of metalcore packed with snarling riffs and blistering drumming. The glitchy electronics are peppered tastefully across the cut, serving only to spice up the song's structure and ramp up the momentum. Underneath vibes on this one. The latter of these two opts for a similarly crushing blitzkrieg, this time with a more mid-paced grinding approach. Some super unsettling refrains on this thing pair up perfectly with the grim dystopian instrumental palette. The band picks up the pace gradually before launching into a monstrous breakdown in the final portion. The pacing on this one is not to be understated. The final leg of this album loses a little bit of steam, unfortunately. Snapshot and Circle Through really are just cutting room floor material in my opinion. The latter in particular is so beneath the band's abilities, it's kind of bizarre to me how they listened back and gave it the same consideration as much of the rest of this album. The lame butt rock style of this cut just pales in comparison to even their most pared down and reserved tracks from previous albums. Snapshot is only decent enough to begin with, but is then marred by its faux inspirational high gloss final leg that gives absolutely nothing to what the song was already not really bringing to the table. The closer is perhaps the only real saving grace of this portion of the album. The multiple phases on this one feel much more thought out and complementary to each other as we move through them. There's a quiet, desolate intro that then gets interrupted by some clattering percussion and harmonized wah guitar. Jamie's vocals become much more strained and passionate here too, before finally we reach the final leg and are given a soaring duet between Reba and Jamie, where lyrically the album's themes of being on the outside, feeling like a subject in an experiment are concluded with a moment of hope. Even though feeling accepted seems impossible, they're going to continue to fight for it. It's a sweet sentiment. Look, this album is far from the best stuff that I've heard from the band thus far. That much is true. Too many moments on this thing just don't aim high enough, or they just get lost in their own ambitions. This thing is very top heavy too. A lot of the highlights really appear in the first half of the record, minus a few exceptions. I like this thing overall, but I was just left feeling underwhelmed by a handful of moments where I felt like the band seemingly toned things down or stayed in their shells a little bit creatively. Giving this thing a 7.3 out of 10. Have you heard it? Do you think Code Orange is still a band to be excited about, or do you think this is the end of the band? They've painted themselves into a corner. Tell me. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell and comment. Big thank you to Audible for sponsoring this video. Imagine if I had an Audible series. That'd be so funny. What would I read? Robert Christgau reviews. I could do a different impression every time as well. All right, that's enough spitballing from me. That's enough talking to myself from me. Sweet dreams. Have a good night. Have a good sleep. Have a good day. Have a good week. Have a good month. Have a good year. If you're going to join a motorcycle gang, at least do your research first. What's another hot take? IPAs are a pretty good beer. All right. With that, I'll leave you to it.